The incident occurred on a Tuesday afternoon in the quiet, tree-lined suburb of Oak Creek. The subject was David Sterling, a decorated special agent in charge with the United States Secret Service, who was standing on the porch of his own home. The officer was Ron Kellerman of the Oak Creek Police Department, responding to a call about a suspicious man loitering in the neighborhood. Within 10 minutes of his arrival, Officer Kellerman would place a federal agent in handcuffs, an act that would not only end his career, but would also trigger a federal investigation into his department and land him in a courtroom facing a 10-year prison sentence for the violation of civil rights under color of law. The body camera footage begins with the jarring slam of a car door. The timestamp in the upper right corner reads 14 hours, 32 minutes, and 17 seconds. The world is a shaky, overexposed lens of green lawns and beige houses. Officer Ron Kellerman adjusts the microphone on his vest, the crackle of static a percussive beat against the suburban quiet. He marches up the pristine concrete walkway of 112 Willow Lane, his hand resting casually, almost possessively, on the grip of his sidearm. His target is a man on the porch, a black man in a simple gray hoodie and black joggers, methodically watering a row of potted ferns. The man, David Sterling, looks up as Kellerman's shadow falls across the steps. He offers a placid, neighborly nod, the kind one gives the mailman or a passing jogger. He sets the watering can down. Kellerman stops at the bottom of the 3 short steps leading to the porch, planting his feet in a wide, confrontational stance. The bodycam view tilts up, framing David against the backdrop of his own front door. "Can I help you, officer?" David's voice is calm, a deep and even baritone that carries no hint of alarm. Kellerman doesn't answer immediately. His eyes do a slow, deliberate sweep, from David's worn running shoes to the hood pulled over his head, lingering on the color of his skin. The silence stretches, thick with unspoken judgment. "I need you to take your hands out of your pockets and place them on your head," Kellerman commands. His voice is flat, devoid of courtesy, the words clipped and final. David's eyebrows furrow slightly, a flicker of confusion crossing his composed features. His hands aren't in his pockets. One was holding the watering can, and now both are hanging loosely at his sides. He complies without argument, lacing his fingers behind his head in a practiced, non-threatening motion. "May I ask what this is about?" David asks, his eyes steady, meeting Kellerman's gaze without challenge but also without submission. "We got a call," Kellerman grunts, taking a step up onto the first stair. "Suspicious individual casing houses in the area." You match the description. David's expression remains neutral, but a deep, weary sigh is almost audible in his posture. He knows the description. He's been the description his whole life. It's a phantom that follows him from the inner city to the manicured lawns of his own hard-earned success. "Officer, with all due respect, this is my house," David states simply. "I live here. My name is David Sterling." Kellerman lets out a short, derisive huff of air. "That's what they all say? Got some ID on you to prove that?" The request is standard, but the tone is anything but. It's laced with disbelief, with the arrogant certainty of a man who has already tried and convicted David in his mind. "My wallet is inside, on the kitchen counter," David explains, his voice still unervingly calm. "If you'll allow me to lower my hands, I can retrieve it for you. Or you can accompany me." This offer, a reasonable solution to the supposed problem, seems to only agitate Kellerman further. He sees it not as cooperation, but as an attempt to control the situation. To him, this man is a suspect, and suspects don't dictate terms. "You're not going anywhere," Kellerman snaps, his hand leaving his sidearm and moving to the taser on his belt. The plastic clicks as he unsnaps the holster. "You're going to stay right there until I tell you otherwise. We're going to do this my way." A curtain twitches in the window of the house across the street. A neighbor, Mrs. Gable, peers out, her face a mask of worried curiosity. Further down the block, a man walking his golden retriever slows his pace, his phone held loosely in his hand, the screen dark but the camera likely recording. The audience is gathering. Kellerman feels their eyes on him, and it fuels his performance. He is the law in this quiet corner of the world, and he will not be made to look foolish or hesitant. The bodycam shows his knuckles are white where he grips his radio. "Dispatch, I'm on scene at 112 Willow. I have a possible suspect detained." He's being uncooperative. David's head tilts slightly. Officer, I have been perfectly cooperative. I have followed your commands, but I do not consent to being detained without cause. A vague description of a suspicious man does not constitute reasonable suspicion, and it certainly doesn't give you probable cause for an arrest, especially when I am on my own private property. He speaks with the precision of a lawyer, each word carefully chosen, a clear and concise recitation of his constitutional rights. This legal accuracy, coming from a man in a simple hoodie, is like gasoline on Kellerman's fire. It enrages him. In his world, criminals don't quote case law. They stammer, they lie, they run. This man's composure is an affront to his authority. Oh, we got a real barrister here, do we? Kellerman sneers, stepping up onto the porch, closing the distance between them until he's standing inches from David's chest. The body cam is filled with the gray fabric of David's hoodie. You think spouting some nonsense you saw on TV is going to get you out of this? Let me tell you how this works. I give the orders. You follow them. That's it. Now turn around. You're being detained. He reaches for David's arm. David doesn't flinch or pull away. His body remains still, but his voice drops, losing its placid tone and taking on a new, harder edge. It's a tone of command, the voice of a man accustomed to being obeyed without question. Officer, I advise you to remove your hand. You are escalating this situation unnecessarily, and you are about to cross a line you cannot uncross. The shift is palpable. The air on the porch crackles with tension. For the first time, a flicker of doubt, small and quickly extinguished, crosses Kellerman's face. But his pride, his ego, and the deep-seated prejudice that guided him up this walkway won't let him back down now. He has an audience. He has a suspect challenging him. He shoves David against the brick wall of the house. I'm the only one who gives advice here, he barks, his voice straining with the effort of asserting dominance. He yanks David's arms behind his back with a rough, practiced motion. The cold steel of handcuffs clicks shut around one of David's wrists. The metallic sound echoes in the quiet afternoon. You are under arrest for obstruction of justice and resisting a lawful order, Kellerman declares, breathing heavily, the adrenaline of the confrontation making his words sharp and ragged. David doesn't struggle. He allows the second cuff to be snapped into place, his body absorbing the shove against the wall without resistance. The physical part of this encounter, he knows, is already lost. The battle has moved to a different arena, one where Kellerman is woefully, dangerously outmatched. With his hands secured tightly behind him, David turns his head, his cheek now resting against the cool brick. His voice is low, but every word is crystal clear, recorded for posterity by the camera just inches from his face. For the record, Officer Kellerman, he says, his eyes finding the officer's name tag. You have just committed a felony. You have unlawfully arrested me. You have assaulted me. And you have done so on federal property, because my mortgage is federally insured. Kellerman laughs, a harsh, ugly sound. Federal property? You're delusional. Now shut your mouth before I add another charge. But the seed of David's words, the calm, factual certainty with which he speaks, has planted itself. The legal precision is unsettling. Kellerman tightens his grip on David's arm, pulling him away from the wall and toward the steps, a public display of his control. But the power dynamic on the porch has already begun to fracture, cracks spreading beneath the surface of Kellerman's blustering authority. From the street, the man with the dog now has his phone up, the red dot of its recording light a tiny, accusatory eye. Mrs. Gable is on her own porch now, her hand over her mouth. They are no longer just watching a police interaction. They are bearing witness. The world is watching. David continues to speak, his voice is steady, chilling metronome counting down the final seconds of Kellerman's career. I want my attorney, and I am formally requesting your supervisor be called to this location. Right now, Kellerman shoves him forward. You'll get your phone call at the station, smartass. He pushes David toward the stairs, but David plants his feet. Officer Kellerman, David says, his voice losing all trace of its earlier patience. It is now glacial, commanding, and absolute. I am a federal law enforcement officer. By placing me in these cuffs, you have interfered with a federal agent in the performance of his duties, even though my current duty is watering my own damn plants. You have made the biggest mistake of your professional life. Call your supervisor, The words hang in the air. Federal law enforcement officer Kellerman freezes mid-shove, his arms still pressed against David's back. He stares at the back of David's head, the gray hood, the ordinary man. A torrent of conflicting thoughts floods his mind. It's a bluff, a desperate lie from a cornered criminal. He's seen it before, but he's never heard it delivered with such bone-deep, unshakable certainty. The man hasn't broken a sweat. He hasn't raised his voice. He has been calm, precise, and analytical through the entire encounter. Too calm. "You're a liar," Kellerman says, but the conviction in his own voice has evaporated. It comes out as a weak, reedy question rather than a statement. "Am I?" David replies, the bitter irony sharp in his tone. "In the front right pocket of my joggers, you will find my credential case. You have my permission to retrieve it. I would suggest you do so before your sergeant arrives and has to witness the full scope of your incompetence." The bodycam view shakes as Kellerman hesitates. The silence is deafening, broken only by the distant chirp of birds and the thumping of Kellerman's own heart, now audible in his ragged breathing. He can feel the eyes of the neighbors burning into his back. His authority, once an impenetrable shield, now feels like a sheet of cracked glass. Slowly, hesitantly, he reaches a gloved hand toward David's pocket. His fingers tremble slightly as they fumble with the fabric. He pulls out a slim, black leather wallet. It feels heavy, substantial. He flips it open. The shaky camera lens zooms in, struggling to focus. For a moment, the image is a blur of black leather and gold. Then, it snaps into sharp clarity. A magnificent, intricately detailed gold shield sits on one side, gleaming in the afternoon sun. The words are unmistakable, etched in deep blue enamel. United States Secret Service. On the other side, under a clear laminate, is a photograph. It's David Sterling, not in a hoodie, but in a crisp dark suit and tie, his expression serious, his gaze direct. Beneath the photo, his name and title are printed in stark, official font. David Sterling, Special Agent in Charge, Presidential Protection Division. The world on the porch seems to tilt on its axis. Kellerman's breath catches in his throat, a choked, strangled sound. The bodycam captures the blood draining from his face, his ruddy complexion turning a pasty, sickly white. He looks from the credentials to the man in handcuffs, then back to the credentials. His mind refuses to connect the two realities, the suspicious man in joggers and the high-ranking federal agent whose photograph he is holding. "No," he whispers. "No, this is fake. It has to be." David lets out a dry, humorless laugh. "Officer, if you believe the credentials of a Secret Service agent are fake, your protocol is to immediately contact the local Secret Service field office for verification. The number is on the back. While you do that, perhaps you should consider the federal statutes you've just violated. 18 U.S. Code Section 242, Deprivation of Rights under Color of Law. 18 U.S. Code Section 111, Assaulting, Resisting, or Impeding a Federal Officer. Each carries a sentence of up to 10 years in a federal prison, not a county jail. A federal penitentiary. Each word is a hammer blow, dismantling Kellerman's reality piece by piece. The arrogant enforcer is gone, replaced by a terrified man drowning in the consequences of his own prejudice. His hands are shaking so badly, he can barely hold the credential case. He fumbles with the handcuffs, trying to find the keyhole, his fingers clumsy and slick with sweat. I'm sorry," he stammers, the words tumbling out. "I didn't. There was a call." The description of a black man in a neighborhood where you don't think he belongs. David finishes for him, his voice like ice. "Save your excuses for your internal affairs interview and your federal deposition. You're going to need them." The cuffs finally click open. David brings his arms around, rubbing his wrists where the steel had bitten into his skin, leaving angry red marks. He doesn't look at Kellerman. He looks past him, down the street, where the flashing lights of an approaching squad car are visible. The supervisor is coming. Kellerman stands frozen, the open credential case still in his hand like a holy relic he has desecrated. He looks utterly broken, a hollow shell of the man who had marched up the walk just minutes before. He has built his career on intimidation and the assumption of guilt, and he just tried to bully one of the most powerful law enforcement officers in the country. The supervisor, a portly sergeant named Miller, pulls up to the curb, his expression already weary. He gets out of his car and walks toward the porch, his eyes taking in the scene. His junior officer, pale as a ghost, a black man in a hoodie rubbing his wrists, and a handful of neighbors openly recording with their phones. "Kellerman, what the hell is going on here?" Miller demands, his voice a low growl. Before Kellerman can form a coherent sentence, David steps forward, taking the credential case from the officer's limp hand. He presents it to Sergeant Miller. "Sergeant," David says, his voice now back to its calm, professional tone, "your officer has just committed an unlawful arrest and assault. I am Special Agent in Charge David Sterling, Secret Service." Miller takes the credentials. His eyes widen as he reads the ID. He looks at David, then at his own trembling officer. The color drains from his face, too. He understands immediately the magnitude of the disaster that has just unfolded on his watch. He turns to Kellerman, his voice a furious whisper. "Ron, what did you do?" Kellerman just shakes his head, unable to speak. "Get in your car. Turn off your camera. Go back to the station and wait for me in my office," Miller orders, trying to contain the fallout. "No," David says, his voice cutting through the sergeant's commands. "His camera stays on. Everything from this point forward will be on the record, and he isn't going anywhere. He is a party to a federal crime scene. I want him and his vehicle secured until the FBI and the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division have been notified." Sergeant Miller's jaw tightens. He is being given orders on his own turf, but he knows he has no choice. The power on this porch no longer belongs to the Oak Creek Police Department. It belongs to the calm, composed man in the gray hoodie. The aftermath was swift and merciless. Officer Ron Kellerman was immediately placed on administrative leave. Within 48 hours, the viral cell phone footage, coupled with the official bodycam recording that David's lawyers had subpoenaed, became a national news story. The narrative was damning. A decorated Secret Service agent, a man who protects the president, was racially profiled, harassed, and assaulted on his own doorstep. The institution, forced into a corner by the undeniable evidence and the high-profile status of the victim, had to respond. The Oak Creek police chief held a press conference, offering a hollow apology to Agent Sterling and the community, promising a full and transparent investigation. But the matter was already out of his hands. The Department of Justice launched its own probe, not just into Ron Kellerman, but into the entire Oak Creek PD, looking for a pattern and practice of civil rights violations. Federal investigators descended on the small suburban department, seizing records, interviewing officers, and creating a palpable sense of panic within the ranks. David Sterling, meanwhile, handled the situation with the same cool professionalism he brought to his job. He filed a federal lawsuit against Kellerman and the city, not for personal enrichment, but for systemic change. His lawyers made it clear that any settlement would be donated in its entirety to organizations dedicated to police reform and civil rights litigation. He was using his power not for revenge, but for correction. The legal process ground forward. 6 weeks after the incident, a federal grand jury handed down an indictment. Ron Kellerman was charged under 18 U.S.C. Section 242. The man who had sneered at the barrister on the porch now had to hire a team of expensive lawyers to defend him against the full weight of the United States government. His union provided initial support, but as the evidence mounted, the crystal-clear bodycam footage, the testimony of the neighbors, the unimpeachable credibility of a senior Secret Service agent, they began to distance themselves. Kellerman was fired from the police force before his trial even began. His name became a toxic symbol of racist policing. The final scene of the public drama played out in a federal courtroom 9 months later. Ron Kellerman, no longer in a crisp uniform but in an ill-fitting suit, stood before a judge, his face gaunt and his shoulders slumped in defeat. He had taken a plea deal to avoid a longer sentence, pleading guilty to a lesser charge that still carried a significant prison term. The judge sentenced him to 3 years in federal prison. As he was led away in handcuffs, real ones this time, the kind that don't come off until a guard unlocks them, he was just another convicted felon, his authority and arrogance stripped away, leaving only a pathetic, broken man. David Sterling sat in the front row of the courtroom, wearing a perfectly tailored suit. He watched the proceedings not with triumph, but with a profound and heavy sense of duty. When it was over, he walked out onto the courthouse steps, into a crowd of reporters. He didn't speak of his own anger or humiliation. He spoke of the oath he had taken, the same oath every law enforcement officer takes, to protect and serve, to uphold the Constitution. This was never about one officer, he said, his voice steady and clear, carrying over the clicks of the cameras. It was about an accountability gap. When the system fails to police itself, it must be forced to. What happened on my porch happens to countless others who don't have a badge and a federal agency to back them up. Their stories must be heard. Their rights must be defended. Our work is not done until the shield of justice protects everyone, regardless of the color of their skin or the neighborhood they live in. He finished speaking, gave a curt nod, and walked away, leaving the media frenzy behind. He had a job to do, a country to protect, and he had just reminded one small, broken part of it that justice, however slow and hard one, is a promise that must be kept.